Hello friends, welcome to the InStyle Knitting Studio. We continue knitting the children's cardigan together. For those visiting us for the first time, I recommend watching the first and second parts please. Follow the links provided, they will be below the video. For the rest of us, we continue knitting. I will initially add one stitch right away. So, here I will have an increase. I will finish the knit row and then the purl side. At the beginning of the row, there will also be one increase. You can make increases right in the knit row at the beginning and end. Here, I want to mention that this first row is the one where we start making increases. We consider it the first. Thus, in total, we need to knit 69 rows. That is, we start counting the rows. You can use a row counter if you have one. You can mark it in a notebook, remember, or later check by the pattern, if it's not too difficult. How many rows have been knitted, and I will note that I am knitting with grandmother's stitches. Added one stitch on both sides. This is our first increase. That is, in the knit row at the beginning, we reach the end of the knit and the beginning of the purl. Again we make an increase. You can make the increase in any way convenient for you. You can knit from the yarn over, or you can knit two from one stitch. But I do it the usual way, with a simple yarn over. It is important not to make a mistake here. For example, if we make an increase at the beginning of the row in the first row of the pattern, then in the second row, at the beginning of the row, we also make an increase. This is our first addition. Next, we knit the third and fourth rows, knitting straight according to the pattern. And in the fifth row, at the beginning of the row, we make an increase. And at the beginning of the sixth row, we make an increase again. It turns out this will be our second increase. Our next increase will be in the 10th row of the pattern. That's it. We will knit with increases up to this point. In the end, I don't know how many stitches you have, but I should have 58 stitches here. 29 multiplied by 2. Throughout the knitting of the entire sleeve, we add 2 edge stitches to all our calculations. I will not discuss this further, so that we know for the future, that is. So we don't forget, in the end, I need to make 15 increases. It will be difficult, hard, but necessary, that's it. Let's go girls, let's keep knitting. Here is my intermediate version. I haven't finished yet. I want to say that while knitting each row, I count the number of stitches on the needle. Why? Because the pattern, as I said, is very temperamental. And as we add stitches, that is, the pattern expands. Somewhere, for example, yarn overs are added, and the stitch where we knit 3 into 1, for example, isn't knit yet, it doesn't fit. Accordingly, these yarn overs add stitches. Or conversely, it happens that there is a reduction. Therefore, I count each row. And if there are too many, I decrease at the beginning or at the end of the row, or I add. I don't know, maybe you'll find some other way to add correctly and regulate the number of stitches to ensure even increases. Well, please, let me know if you do it differently. So, girls, let's keep knitting, and we will meet as soon as we have the number of stitches we need on the needle. Here, I have reached the point where I have 58 stitches, plus 2 edge stitches on the needle. Now the most interesting part begins. Next, we will decrease from this side and from the opposite side. So, here is my little sleeve. And I will decrease from this side, and at the same time from this side, so this is like my half, just like that. Let me show you. Here's my half of the sleeve, just as it's drawn here. Let's imagine this is my half of the sleeve. Now, let's start our decreases. I divided this part into 3 equal parts. 29 stitches. I will arrange it this way. So here I will have 9 stitches, here 10, and here also 10. we will divide this part into pairs and triples. I will split 10 into pairs, 2 pairs, that is, 2 each. We will decrease stitches, next, 3 stitches. In the end, we will have 10 stitches. How will we do it? Here is our sleeve, and the first action. That is, I will continue knitting in the main pattern. Here, I will decrease 3 stitches. When I reach the end of the row, I will also need to decrease 3 stitches here. I do not know how you decrease. Do you make the decrease in this row, or from the purl side? I do it from the purl side in the second row. I will also make 3 decreases here. I will make the decrease in the same way using a slip stitch. After making 3 decreases, we will knit the purl row. In the knit row, I will again make 3 decreases. I will knit to the purl side, and again 3 decreases. That is, we need to make 3 decreases 2 times. 2 times on one side, and 2 times on the other side. Next, we will decrease by 2 stitches in the same way. We have dealt with the first part. Now how we will knit, decrease at this place. We will divide this part into 3 sections. It cannot be divided into 3 equal parts since I have 10 stitches. I will divide it this way. Here, 3 stitches. Here also 3, and here 4, that is, if we have any leftovers, we will place them closer to our underarm. Accordingly, we will decrease by 1 stitch 4 times in 4 steps, decreasing 1 stitch at a time. Next, the middle section decreases 3 times by 1 stitch. But in the middle section, we will decrease every other row. That is, we decrease in the knit row, do not decrease in the next knit row, and will decrease in the one after that. Here, 3 stitches will also be decreased in 3 steps, 1 stitch from each side, but in every row, every other row. We will only decrease these middle 3 stitches. So I think it is clear here. We will also knit, and I will show how I decrease. My last section has 9 stitches right here. Here, we split this section into 3. It divides evenly for me, so I get 3 times. I will decrease by 3 stitches from both sides. And my last trio, I will have 3 stitches left on this side, and on the other side too. I will close them all at once in one step, all 6 stitches. In one step we close, that's all. The theory here is clear. Let's start knitting. So, I have the beginning of the knitting on the purl side here. Well, it is basically irrelevant. According to my calculations, I now need to decrease 3 stitches from both sides. The decrease is done in the same way. And we do not knit the last stitches of the row, but slip them, as I showed, onto the right needle, not knitting, with the yarn in front, so. We decrease 3 stitches from this side, decreased. Next, I knit the row to the end. I do not knit the last stitch, but slip it onto the right needle, yarn in front. We turn the knitting, and on this side, I will also decrease 3 stitches. The first 2 are slipped onto the right needle, and we cast the first stitch over the second. Then we knit the second as per the pattern, and cast the first over the second. And finally, we cast the first over the second for the third stitch as well. That's it, we have completed the decrease. Here are 3 stitches. Accordingly, we knitted this decrease of 3 stitches on both sides. Next, we will continue to make these decreases in the same way. The next trio, duo, and duo. In total, I have 29 stitches multiplied by 2 sides. This equals 58 stitches. That is, I will knit until there are 38 stitches instead of 58 on the needle. Since we are knitting the last part, 10 stitches multiplied by 2, thus, 20 stitches should decrease for me. And in the end, there should be 38 stitches. It is essential to ensure the number of stitches is correct, as the pattern is very difficult in this regard. So, let's knit. We will figure things out further from this point. Here, I knitted this part, and I have 38 stitches on the needles. Next, we proceed to knit the middle part of the decreases, these of ours. First we will decrease in 4 steps by 1 stitch, but on each side. Here on this side, I will decrease 1 stitch. My decreases started from the purl side. They go like this, the first decrease, that is, from one side. Here, I decreased 1 stitch. Then I knit my purl side to the end according to the pattern. You may have this as the front side. Here is my end of the row. I slipped the last stitch without knitting it. Next, from the reverse side, I will also decrease 1 stitch. After that, I will finish the row. And I will also not knit the last stitch. That's it, I decreased 1 stitch from both sides. It turns out I need to repeat the same decreases 3 more times. We completed 1 time out of 4. That is, we will also decrease 3 times by 1 stitch on both sides. We knit until this moment. Next, we need to decrease by 1 stitch in 3 steps from each side, but already every other row. On this side, I will decrease 1 stitch and knit to the end of the row. Here is my end of the row. Do not knit the last stitch. Turn the work. On this side, we will also decrease 1 stitch. Next, we will knit according to the pattern. I made 1 decrease on both sides. We need to make 3 such decreases. Next, I will knit straight for 2 rows. And on the 3rd row, I will make the next decrease on both sides. Then, we will knit straight for 2 rows again, and make the decrease for the 3rd time on both sides by 1 stitch. I think this is clear. In the end, I will finish up to this point. I will decrease 6 stitches. Everyone knits to this point. Next, we knit this part. Now, we will not skip 1 row, but in each row, we will decrease 1 stitch in 3 steps. That is, right now, I will decrease 1 stitch here. I will go to the end of the row. I will also decrease 1 from the back side. Next, I will again decrease from the wrong side. This means I will be decreasing in every row. In total, I will decrease 3 stitches from each side. I will decrease 6 stitches. I should have 18 stitches on the needle. And now we will move on to this last, our 3rd part. Let's knit. That's it. We finished the 2nd part. I have 18 stitches on the needle. Now let's focus on the 3rd part. Everything here is simple. Here we need to close 3 stitches from both sides in 3 steps. That is, right now I will close 3 stitches. Next, I will knit according to the pattern to the end of the row. I do not knit the last stitch but transfer the yarn to the right needle before working. Here, we also decrease 3 stitches. We leave the first 2 unknit. Next, we knit the rest. We also yarn over the 2nd stitch, and the 3rd. 3 stitches have been decreased. Next, we knit to the end of the row. I should have 12 stitches, that is minus 6 stitches. In the next row, we will also decrease 3 stitches. We knit to the end of the row. In the following row, we will also decrease 3 stitches at the start. Here, our last decrease is also 3 stitches. In total, we had 12. We decreased by 3 stitches. It should result in 6 stitches. That is, we closed the 2nd group of 3 stitches from both sides by 3 stitches. Then we knit to the end of the row. We have 6 stitches on the needle. We turn the knitting. Now, as I said, we will close these 6 stitches, our last group of 3, immediately. There are only a few left. We make 1 chain stitch. This way, we secure the yarn and cut it. I usually leave the tail quite long. It's better to cut it later than to run out and have it too tight. Here is how my sleeve turned out. Here's my little sleeve. Everything will be sewn here. I think it will be nice. Let's knit another sleeve just like this one, and begin sewing our parts together. After the sleeves are knitted, we need to connect the front and back pieces. Initially, I shouldn't have closed it. I didn't plan to close it with a shoulder seam, but then I decided to make this seam because it's less noticeable. Therefore, I will unravel my last closing row. I will move these loops, both on the back and on the front, to a separate needle. Then, we will make the shoulder seam. This is necessary, so that here on the shoulder it looks nice and less noticeable. That something is sewn here. If you closed your last row like I did, let's say, just unravel one stitch and put it on the needle. I have moved everything to the needles. One side is temporarily on safety pins for now. I close the middle of the back. Here, on this side, I transfer to the needles so. I have the same number of stitches on both needles. That's 12 stitches in my case. Now we will make the shoulder seam. For those who do not know how to do the shoulder seam, please look. I have recorded a lesson. The link is below the video. Now, I will make 2 shoulder seams. Don't forget that after knitting the shoulder seam, we also need to sew the shoulder slopes. After that, we will meet. We already have finished sleeves, one and the second. Now we just need to sew them to the armhole. How do I do it? I take the sleeve to the wrong side. I turn it around, that is, with the wrong side facing me. I also place the main fabric with the wrong side up. The right side to the right side. I will sew the sleeves using a hook with a slip stitch. I have a lesson on how to do this stitch. I will leave the link below the video. I usually sew from the shoulder seam. The main thing here is to sew well at the shoulders, so it lays nicely. You can adjust something under the arm at the bottom. After I sew my sleeves, we will meet. We will perform the edging of the neckline and fronts. That's it. I have sewn the sleeves, the ends. Of the threads I have hidden as much as possible. Let's do the edging of the neckline. Here is our neckline. That is, we place the fabric so that the right side is facing us. Then we start casting on stitches by inserting the needle into the edge stitches at the neckline. But I find it uncomfortable to do this with a needle. I always do it with a hook. That is how I do it. I initially insert the hook into the corner stitch and pull the working yarn. The hook is much easier to use for all this. The hook is about the same thickness as the needle. Then I do exactly the same thing. As we do with needles, that is, I insert the hook into each edge stitch and pull the yarn. This way, I cast on. I transfer the stitches to the needle. It is important to use a one-sided hook here, so that the stitches can be easily transferred to the main needle later. And we need to ensure that the neckline is not too tight and not too loose. That is, we need to find the midpoint when casting on stitches. Thus, we will cast on to the end of our neckline. Even if it takes time to transfer from the hook to the needle, I still think it is faster than casting on stitches and loops. Which don't get caught in general. It looks very clumsy when I do everything with needles. I probably won't add or subtract anything here. That is, I will cast on exactly as the stitches go. I will finish casting on to the end of my neckline. Well, that's it. I have cast on the stitches, and now I will be crocheting around the neckline in garter stitch. That is, I will be knitting both the right and wrong rows as knit stitches, just like I started knitting the sleeve. There I also knitted 9 rows in garter stitch. I will also try to knit 9 rows at the neckline. And after that, we will meet and see if this height is enough for the neckline. That's it, let's get started. On the 9th row, I closed the stitches. The fabric was positioned with the wrong side facing me. I closed it as usual, using the bind-off method we used before. After that, once we have finished the neckline, we will work on the hem. That is, I am now casting on, placing the fabric with the right side facing me from the bottom, and I will start casting on stitches using the hook. And then, I will transfer it to the needles. I will cast on all the stitches, I will cast on circular needles, and then I will knit in garter stitch. You, my dear ones, adjust the length yourself. If it's enough for you, then in principle it can be left without edging. I think it will wash out and won't curl that much. It might even look fine. I don't know, but judge by your own length. If you have enough length, then edge it less. I will be adding a lot since I miscalculated a bit with the height of the back. So well, let's knit the bottom then. After this, we will meet and edge our front pieces, meaning, we'll make the placket. Here for the buttons for the closure, alright? Let's get started. Well, I have finished edging the bottom of my cardigan. Here is the wide stripe I ended up with. I really like how the waves look here. That is, our lace pattern creates this wave, and while edging, I got these beautiful waves. In general, I cast on stitches as I showed, that is, the right side was facing me. I cast on stitches, I didn't add anything, I didn't make any increases, just cast on stitches, and started knitting. I knitted 15 rows in garter stitch, and closed the stitches on the 15th row. So the fabric was facing wrong side to me. I closed the stitches on the 15th row. You decide for yourself. You can knit a bit less, you can knit more. Meanwhile, I knitted 1 placket on the left front, since my cardigan is for a girl. Accordingly, I will have buttons on the left placket. I knitted it. So there is no need for buttonholes here, therefore, I knitted it to make it quicker. I will show you how to knit this placket with buttonholes later. I will tell you a bit about how I knitted this placket. I positioned the fabric with the right side facing me. I cast on stitches, but here I made an increase. I cast on 3 stitches, added the 4th, that is, I made a yarn over. You can increase in another way. But I made yarn overs, that is, after every 3 stitches, I made a yarn over throughout this entire cardigan of mine. After I cast on the stitches, I knitted 10 rows in garter stitch. On the 11th row, I closed the row. That is from the wrong side. This was my 11th row. I closed the stitches when closing. You need to ensure it is not too tight, but also not too loose. By the way, I closed it in the usual way, as I did everywhere before. That is, here you need to make sure the fabric lays nicely. That's it, we figured this out, the sleeves are sewn. The neckline is knitted here. By the way, is the neckline, you can see for yourselves too. Here, the order can be changed. I first crocheted the neckline, and then made these strips. You can switch the order so that the neckline border is on top. But accordingly, here you will need to make a buttonhole when knitting the neckline. I didn't want to do that. Therefore, I first knitted the neckline, and then I will have strips for the buttons on top. That's it. Now let's knit the strip for the buttons here. Here, I cast on a few stitches onto the hook. Here, I didn't make any increases, that is, I didn't make any yarn overs. At the end of our cast on edge here, we also will not make any increases. And here along this entire strip, we will make increases. How do I do it? I cast on 3 stitches, then I make a yarn over. After that, I cast on 3 stitches again. Again, I make a yarn over. That is, I add a stitch every 4th stitch. Increases can be done differently, but I made yarn overs. In the wrong side row, we do not forget to knit these yarn overs in such a way that we do not create holes. That is, we cross the stitches. That's it, generally. I will now be casting on 3 stitches, a yarn over, 3 stitches, a yarn over until the end of the row, here at the end. Probably. On the neckline border, I will not make any increases after that. We will knit 4 rows in garter stitch. On the 5th row, we will meet and make holes for the buttons. I am transferring all the cast-on stitches from the hook to the needle. I believe you remember how we crocheted neckline. That is, it is easier for me to work with a hook when casting on stitches. I will knit the 2 rows before creating the buttonholes a little tighter. These will be my 3rd and 4th rows. Okay, we are casting on this row, knitting 4 rows in garter stitch, and meeting on the 5th row. Well, I have knitted 4 rows. To begin with, we will count how many stitches we have on the needles. I have 77. Now, let's do the calculations. My total number of stitches is 77. Subtract the stitches. At the start of the row, I will knit the first 2 stitches as per the pattern. That is, I will slip the edge stitch and knit the second one. At the end of the row, we will knit 2 stitches according to the pattern. Accordingly, from the total number of stitches, we will subtract 4 stitches. That is, 2 stitches at the beginning, and 2 stitches at the end of the row. Next, we will subtract. So we will have 6 buttons. Accordingly, 6 holes. That is, how will we make the holes? We will knit 2 stitches together, and make a yarn over. Accordingly, for each hole, we will knit 2 stitches together. Therefore, we multiply 6 buttons by 2 stitches for each button. That gives me 12 stitches. Accordingly, we subtract 12 stitches as well. We end up with 61 stitches. Now we need to distribute 61 stitches in such a way that the buttons are evenly spaced along the band. What do I do next? I divide 61 stitches by 5 buttons, not buttons, but the distance. This is the distance from one button to the next. You can draw it out for yourself somehow. Or I don't know how, but it seems we need to count how many spaces we should have. I have 6 buttons, meaning from one button to another, I will have 5 spaces like this. If you have 7 buttons, there will be 6 spaces, so you need to subtract 1 from the number of your buttons. I approximately have 12 stitches. That means I will create a buttonhole. Next, I will knit 12 stitches, then I will make another buttonhole. And again, I will knit 12, but there will be a little more. I will probably knit about 13 stitches. You understand? I believe this will help you somehow. If you want to do it visually, look, or maybe you have some other way. The 5th row will be a wrong side row for me. That means at the beginning of the row, I will knit 2 stitches as per the pattern. This is my edge stitch. And I will slip it. I will knit the second stitch knitwise. Then from 2 stitches, I will knit 1 and make a yarn over. After that, I will knit 12 stitches knitwise. Then, I will knit 2 stitches together, knitwise and a yarn over. Again, 12 stitches knitwise. And again I will knit 2 stitches together, knitwise and a yarn over. At the end of the 5th row, we will knit 2 stitches together and a yarn over here. And we will knit the 2 stitches that we subtracted here according to the pattern. That means 1 knit stitch, and I will knit the last one purlwise. In the next row, we will knit the yarn overs in such a way that hole is formed. This time we need this hole to create a nice opening, and following the advice for the next 2 rows as well. This will be the 6th and 7th rows, knitted a little tighter, just as we knitted the 3rd and 4th rows a bit tighter too. That means 2 rows on one side and 2 rows on the other side. We knit tighter so that our stitches are neater. And then from the 6th to the 10th row, we will knit in garter stitch. We will close the stitches in the 11th row. At this point, the fabric will be facing us and on the wrong side. The stitch closure will be done in the usual way, as we did before, that is the method of slipping. It is essential to ensure that the last row does not pull tight, but also is not too loose. In other words, one needs to find some middle ground when closing each stitch. Well, we are finishing our strip and will meet afterwards. Well, my dear ones, I have finally knitted our little cardigan. I closed my last strip on the wrong side. I washed it and dried it on a flat surface, sewed on the buttons, and added decorative appliques. I have heat press appliques. Overall, I liked everything, but I must say honestly, I do not really enjoy knitting the front pieces and back separately. Although we did not knit here too detailed, meaning we knitted one large piece, which simplified our work a lot, there was no need to sew on the side. But still, I prefer raglan knitting. Nonetheless, one should know how to do such things. Thank you for being with me. I believe you also ended up with beautiful cardigans. It would be very interesting to see your versions. Please leave your photos in my social media groups. You will find the links under the video. I think everything was clear. However, if you have any questions, ask me in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't yet, so you don't miss anything new, as there will be many masterclasses on the channel soon. For hats, for children's hats for boys and girls. Also, there will be masterclasses on adult hats. Friends, thank you for your company. Always stay stylish, wishing you all goodness.